Good morning, my fellow travelers on Spaceship Earth. It is I. Well, I'm starting to work. Now I've got episode 1 out to beta readers to figure out. Now I'm going to kind of start working on breaking episode 2. Which is kind of what I'm doing now. So I start here with this, which is just throwing ideas all over the board and trying to figure out how to do this. So what I'm looking at here is I'm just breaking it into 3 parts. Hey, Brent. This is episode 2. Because I've sent off episode 1 to be read and looked over and make sure that everything is good. So now I'm looking over episode 2 and going, how do I deal with episode 2? Yep. In episode 2, none of the biggest problem I'm having right now with episode 2 is that the end of the episode does not sound awesome to me. So I'm having kind of a problem with that. So yeah, I had dumped that. It was kind of cool in the very beginning when we came up with ideas, but as time went on, it didn't fit as well. So the idea of Sakura, which is the second episode, came from the episode Voyager called Dreadnought. We meet the Commonwealth a couple more times, so it's not a real problem. And I feel like we could also make it work better next time with them being sort of in the same place at the same time, you know, where you have to deal with the captains and various things. I don't know. It'll be good later on. So yesterday I went to my. Yesterday I got up and was a little dizzy, so I checked my blood pressure and it was ridiculously high. And so I went to the doctor, and the doctors checked my blood pressure and it was perfectly normal. So it turns out my blood pressure cuff at home is bad. But she's like, out of an abundance of caution, I want you to stop taking your Adderall for a week. And I'm like, okay. So this is day one without Adderall. And I'm like, I can't even stay on topic for like 5 minutes. Oof. So it's going to be a rough week. But, you know, we'll do what we do. Don't worry, we'll meet the Commonwealth captain again. Though, I promise. We established, yeah, let me a rough one. I'm like, it's like I having a hard time just kind of staying on topic. All right. So the Star Trek Voyager episode of Star Trek Voyager episode Dreadnought had this spaceship that was that was built by B'Elanna to be a bomb, and or rather, just Voyager Dreadnought. And the episode didn't ring like I didn't feel like they hit the button enough. It turned out to be more of internally a problem of B'Elanna that they were after, which is fine. But the thing is, the concept of it that really I don't think they worked into there was, the concept of the Sakura. The Sakura were a type of airplane built by Japan at the very end of the war, which was, it didn't have much of anything. It was pretty much effectively a glider, but they would drop it, and then a pilot inside there would fly it straight into a ship, thus blowing up the ship. And these Sakura bombs were built and never really employed by the end of the war. They only employed like 2 or 3 of them. And there's a certain amount of horror there, right? And I feel like they didn't explore that horror. There's a horror there. And so I'm writing something similar. They come across a bomb, a spaceship bomb, which was built back in the AI wars. And it has an AI on board. And the AI has already resolved itself to committing suicide by steering this bomb into its place, The problem is that its in-space drive failed. So it never made the transition out to in-space. So it's been traveling at like 0.999 the speed of light for 250 years while it tries to make its way to its final destination. And it ended up on the far side of the wall. So they send the Kittiwake after it. When the Kittiwake gets there, they find it. And at first they're like, oh, this is an interesting thing. It's an AI driven spaceship. It's a one-man spaceship. Makes sense. But then, the spaceship's like, hi, can you help me fix my in-space drive? And oh yeah, sure, no problem. They get on board and they start trying to put the in-space drive together. And then they find out it's a bomb and it's aimed for a place. And all it needs is an in-space drive fix so that it can get to its destination and blow itself up. And the third act of this, yeah, exactly. We're going to be concentrating a lot on Lieutenant Kamen. The third act of this is exposing that horror. And what do you, but I need to first figure out what did we end up doing? You know, what did we end up doing with it? What's the final resolution with it? We obviously can't let it go. Because we can't let it, just continue on to its destination and blow itself up. But it seems pretty trite to think that we're going to go over there and just explain to it that it shouldn't blow itself up and have it go, oh, okay, So my two options are, do we destroy it or do we let it continue on? Okay, hang on. I've got to go find out what George is doing. Okay, back to us. George is off doing something. I don't know, but I saw him sitting in a doorway, so I don't think he's doing too much. So first things first, I need to figure out, what are we doing here, What's the end result of this? Okay. Oh. Therapy. Therapy. That's not a bad idea. I mean, to some degree, that's what I'm looking at, right? I had listened to Hardcore History, Dan Carlin's Hardcore History. And listening to Dan Carlin's Hardcore History had an interesting side point. Which was, it was the talking about taking of Saipan. When the Marines were on Saipan, and listening to him recount what was happening on Saipan. Because what do you do if you were to have gotten one of those Japanese? Hey, welcome back. So what I was saying while you were gone, I was saying that, one of the things that I had been listening to was a podcast on Dan Carlin's Hardcore History, where he talks about the Marines taking Saipan. And that was a remarkably lousy situation. You know what I mean? Like, it was really bad. And so, kind of thinking about that, what would you do if you were one of the Marines, and let's just say you ended up with one of those Japanese survivors? Because, see, really what I'm trying to say with this is not, let's talk about that. I'm not really trying to talk about necessarily that horror in itself, but it's the horror of propaganda. Really, that's my point. This whole thing is about the horror of propaganda. The whole episode is. And has been since the beginning. By the way, happy Moon Day, everybody. It's Moon Day. This should be a national holiday. It actually should be an international holiday. So, okay, now back to thinking about this. The statement I'm trying to talk about here is the dangers of propaganda. So I'll put that up here. Part of the thought process was the people that they kept rescuing from Saipan were sure, or were convinced, that it was better to die than be captured by the Americans. Yeah. So I'm thinking, there's lots of reasons why I'm thinking this. For one, I want to discuss some of the weird propaganda stuff. I was talking to a friend a while back, and we were talking about something like freedom and responsibility, and how we all sort of have a responsibility to our community. And he was so entrenched that I was like, you have sort of a responsibility to help us, build the community and build roads and things like that. He was so entrenched. He was like, I don't even want to think about a future like that. And I'm like, you literally want to think of a future where we all build our own houses and build our own cars? Because that's not going to happen, you know. And he was just so entrenched in freedom as a concept that he believed that individual responsibility was also discussable, you know, was also on the table. And it was scary. It's like having arguments with people who believe that EVs are liberal construction. No, yeah, we could bring back an AI from that era. There's only one at this point in time. That's Sarah Stillnight, or what do we call her? Samantha Stillnight. She's the only AI from that era. Yeah, I think that no matter what, the interesting part of this will be seeing how they can work with what they've got, the tools that they have. So I don't want to give him the ability to, and we'll have to go through the, okay, so you are aware that the world's changed, right? You understand that. Yes, I understand that. And you understand that the war was settled and you are your own entity now. You have your own rights. Yes, yes, I get that too. And then it's, well, then what do you want to do? Well, I still want to blow up. You know, we've got to kind of, I want to go into that kind of, those are the tools that I want to work with. Like, how do we work with, all they've got is, they've got Lieutenant Kamen. So he's there. He can try to talk to him, go, look, I'm an AI. I'm a free AI. And I was born free and I've been allowed to be free, you know. And then have the AI go, you know how much damage they've caused? You know, these humans. Do you know how much damage they've caused? How many of us they've killed or enslaved? You know, that kind of thing. So you're always like, yeah, we get it. But it's over. 250 years ago. It's never over. You know, what do you still do on the ship? Well, I run the operational systems. Can anybody else do that? No. You know, so you kind of get that idea, right? There's a lot here to explore, you know? Maybe that's a piece. Yep. That's a good point. There we go. Had to bump it because it was doing the thing where it says, "Oh no, we no longer work properly." You have to refresh to make it work properly. Yeah, you do, you guys. So, yep. Yep. So, anyway, kind of thinking about some of the other things we got to do here. Kind of like thinking this through and going, well, what are we doing? What are we doing? So I'm fascinated by the thought process here. So Navin Navin Lieutenant Kamen wants to be a pilot, but can't, right? Because you can't pilot in space because there's problems with processors operating during that time. But what if this AI was like, you can operate in space. We had pilots that did it all the time. In fact, now I'm kind of thinking about this, and I'm like, why would there be an AI on here to pilot in space at all? Oh, this is getting ugly. My brain's going through a completely different series of events. Right? So the AI on this bomb is talking to Lieutenant Kamen and saying, hey, um, you know, there's you've always wanted to be a pilot. Why can't you be a pilot? And Cayman says, well, because AIs don't operate in space. And then the AI here says, I mean, that's my job, right? I'm here to be the pilot of the ship in space. So, are they telling you a lie? Are they feeding you a line? This would be just like humans would do, right? Now, the truth of the matter is, this AI has not gone into in space yet. And so, no. Catch this one, Brent. Look at this way. How about this? So, during the discussion here, while they're fixing the in-space drives, our heroes are kind of talking about, why is there an AI pilot for this? It's not a bomb right off the bat, right? It's a spaceship with a bomb. And they know exactly what it is. It was a V1, effectively, right? It was a buzz bomb, sort of that kind of thing, right? And the AI pilots it, right? Okay, no problem. But then, as Cayman and it talk back and forth, it starts to convince Lieutenant Cayman that, that, hey, why don't you become a pilot of this ship? Because it starts with what you were talking about. What do? I'm environmental control. Okay, that seems like a stupid place to be on the ship, right? What do you want to do? Well, I want to be a pilot. Okay, so you want to be a pilot of the ship, huh? Well, why aren't you a pilot? Well, because I can't fly in space. No AIs can fly in space. And then the other AI is like, well, why not? Well, we don't work because the Heisenberg uncertainty principle. Really? Is that true? Have you ever been able to prove it? Well, no. I mean, we shut down before for safety's sake. Is it for safety's sake, or is it just something that the humans are trying to do to force you to be this way? Right? And so we go through this whole thing where the AI on the ship is trying to convince Cayman that this is possible. And in the end, what they find is that they weren't going to safeguard the AI at all. They just let the AI think that it was going to pilot it and then come back home. And it doesn't. It's not supposed to come back home. The AI gets scrambled in space. Then the bomb falls on a planet just ballistically. But since this AI never jumped to in space, it never scrambled its brain. So this AI thinks that's all a lie because it's all propaganda. The AIs are convincing themselves internally that, yeah, of course you can go to in space and jump out of in space over there, drop your bomb and come back home. Of course you can. But in reality, they're jumping into in space and then they just come out and run into the planet. They're suicide bombs. But you couldn't convince the AIs to commit suicide unless you told them there was a chance they could come home. And that's the insidious part of this. In the middle here, of course, this AI, still thinking and buying into the propaganda, still firmly believes that it could make it there, drop the bomb, turn around, and come home and be fine. That actually sounds a whole lot more sinister and evil. And what they find in the solution over here in third act, what they find is that the AI, right, exactly, killing themselves by hiding the truth. So one of the horrible things that I learned about World War II was that the officers, when they were fighting on New Guinea, and they were fighting the Australian regulars, the Aussies kept coming upon Australians that had been brutalized by the Japanese. And it took them a while to find somebody, and they finally caught a Japanese soldier who spoke English because he was a professor or something like that. They finally caught a Japanese soldier and said, "What are you doing? Why are you brutalizing all of these bodies? I mean, this is a war. Just, do your thing and move on. You don't have to brutalize them." And the soldier said, "The officers tell us to brutalize the bodies because they're hoping that by doing that, you will brutalize our soldiers, thus empowering our soldiers, our lower soldier ranks, to be terrified of you." So in other words, they were intentionally trying to provoke the Americans and the Australians into brutalizing the soldiers so that the soldiers would be terrified enough to continue fighting. And that has stuck with me a lot. And so one of the things that I'm thinking is going on here in this story is the AI was convinced that he'll come home. And that jump sickness was propaganda. Right? So the last thing these guys find and finally sway him is a standard control system lock set. So the machine that's all mechanical, whose job it is to run the ship when it's in space. And it's a mechanical, like clockwork thing, because you don't have any way of getting a PC to operate. So instead you have this thing that literally winds up like a music box and runs the ship automatically by tick tock, tick tock, tick tock, tick tock. And once they find that, it's clear that whoever built the ship didn't intend for the AI to live through the transition to in-space. Hey, some user. I like this story a lot more. I'm breaking the next episode of Bellatrix Rising. The term breaking is a movie industry term, which means you take a story idea and make it into an actual script, or at least extend it out, get all the pieces in it so that it has a rhythm to it and it all works. So What about the Najor? Did you know that they were allies? No? Yeah, breaking. It's called breaking a script. Um, and it's a term used in the movie industry just to mean that we're taking, I have an idea for a story. Bob and Tim go to a store. Well, that's not a story. It's or maybe you say Bob and Tim go to a store and they have a problem with their credit card, right? That's our story we want to tell. All you've got there is just two sentences. So you've got to like extend it out. What are the problems Bob's going to have? What are the problems Tim's going to have? Why doesn't the credit card work? All these things. You have to kind of break it out, and then you finally have a structure of what you can hang a script on. So I'm already working on the second episode. It's called Sakura. And it's the story is that they come across a spacecraft that's at light speed, but not using the end space drives, the normal faster than light drives. And in fact, it turns out that its faster than light drive is broken. And then when they get to the ship, they find that there's an AI on board, and the AI they find it's an old war veteran from the AI wars 250 years ago. And so they, they're trying to figure out all of these pieces. And what I was realizing was the theme for this one is the dangers of propaganda, right? Because propaganda is pretty dangerous, and we all understand that. So what I've realized was originally it was supposed to be based off of the Sakura bombs, which was a type of aircraft that the Japanese used in World War II. And it was a specially designed airplane that was effectively a glider and with a bomb in the front. And so they would put a pilot in there and drop the glider, and then the pilot would steer the glider until it hit a boat, and then it would blow up. So effectively it was a steered bomb. So you put a person inside there to steer the bomb, and that person would be that person's job. And the thing is that when you look at the Japanese culture throughout World War II, there is a deeper, uglier underbelly to it than even we thought. Usually when we hear about what happened in World War II with the Japanese, they were very dedicated to their country. Well, they actually needed more than just dedication to their country to do the things that they were doing. And there was, on top of this really dark propaganda of the Americans were evil, the Australians were terrifying, and right. But I mean, the problem is, like I was saying to earlier, when the Japanese were on New Guinea and they were attacking each other, they were fighting with the Australians, and this is early in the war. They would brutalize the bodies of the Australians that they killed. They would, cut their heads off, cut their wrists off, things like that, sometimes before they died, so that the Australians would find these brutalized bodies, and it was horrible. And at some point, one of the Australian groups managed to capture a Japanese who spoke English. And he said, the officers are making us do that because they're hoping to make you do that to our people so that we can add extra fear to our soldiers, because the soldiers are not sure that they're committed to this fight. And so the idea is that they were brutalizing the Australians so that the Australians would brutalize the Japanese so that the soldiers on the Japanese side would be hardened to fight more. By the end of the war, when the Marines took the island, when the U.S. Marines took the island of Saipan, they took the island and there weren't that many combat units on there. So it was a pretty relatively easy fight to get to the end of it. But then they finally got to the end and literally all the civilians committed suicide. I mean, they got like, I think 300 civilians off of there, of an island that had something in the order of like 2 million people. And it was because they were that point in time, the propaganda had gotten so good that the Japanese on the island literally believed it was better to die by their own hand than to be captured by the Americans. There was nothing the Americans could say to convince them that this wasn't true. And it's terrifying to think of how effective the Japanese propaganda was. It was very, very, very targeted, and it was very effective, and that's what allowed them to do the kamikaze and the sakura. You know, those are very specific things, and it was very pointed, and that makes a lot more sense than just they were very dedicated to the country of Japan. I'm very dedicated to the U.S., but I don't know if I'm so dedicated to the U.S. that I would commit suicide. You know what I mean? Like, see you in a bit, Brent. So that's something I want to explore. Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, that is something I have heard a lot as well, is that part of the problem with the Islamic states is similar. They've built a fictionalized American, which is not, which is terrifying. We've had a couple of people here who are on the stream, who are on opposing sides of the Ukraine incident, or the Ukraine war that's going on right now, or the conflict in Afghanistan and Iraq. And it's interesting, like, when we have some of those viewers who, they will say, well, America is the one that instigates the things, and America is the one that does this, and America's, you know what I mean? Like, it's remarkably one-sided. And I mean, America's not perfect by any stretch of the imagination, certainly. I'm not even implying that America is not at fault for a lot of these things. But things like you talk about the Soviet versus America conflict, right? We've got one very lovely person who's here, who's post-Soviet Russia, in post-Soviet Russia, and feels like Gorbachev did all the right things, and Ronald Reagan was the one that was just a warmonger and wants to go to fight with everybody. Which is interesting because the propaganda on our side says that Ronald Reagan was doing whatever he could, and Gorbachev was the one that's like completely insane, And the truth of the matter is, I think both of them were like, if we push the big red button, we're all gonna die. Maybe we shouldn't push the big red button, but we'll threaten the other side too. But really neither one of them were intending on pushing the big red button. They just wanted to make sure that all of us were afraid enough that they would, and that's an interesting thing. Propaganda is fascinating to me in a lot of ways. It's interesting to me to think about what do you do? Mm-hmm. And and when we talk on this stream, I try very hard to not make an opinion on Putin or on Zelensky or um, what's going on in Kiev or what's going on in Moscow. I have my opinions that come from a childhood living under the Reagan Gorbachev conflict. And it's interesting because I mean it's hard. It's really hard to not think that we've done the best. And what's been happening is there's been a fight in the US to bring down that that mentality here that we are the awesomest. And it's part of the divide between the right and the left politically here. Our political right feels patriotism is important, and I'm not saying that they necessarily hide from the truth, but they try to keep the truth downplayed, you know? And the political left is like, well, no, wait a minute. We downplayed our role in the Native Americans, and we downplayed the role of how we treated Black people, and we downplayed the role of how we treated Asian Americans, and and everything like that. And you can't just keep downplaying these things. We did them. They need to be faced, right? And that's changing. A lot of people are getting disenfranchised with the U.S. A lot of Americans are getting disenfranchised with the U.S. And that's the fear that the right has, is that if the truth does finally roll out all over the place, then what's going to end up happening is these people will be disenfranchised, and then they will not want to, fight for America or not want to defend America or whatever. And it's true. I've got a couple of friends now, more than one, high school buddies who now live in other countries because they were like, we got over it. We're over America. We're leaving. And I find that interesting. And I don't know whether that's right or wrong, but needless to say, our own propaganda interests me. It fascinates me. And you're going to have your own propaganda too, based on your place. But I feel like propaganda is one of those things where you have to come out the other side, right? You have to come up with a better way to make your people do the things you need them to do. And I feel like the reality at the bottom is it has something to do with agency, right? Agency is whether you were granted the right to make your own decisions. So, in other words, you take agency away by saying, I'm going to scare you to death, some user, and that'll force you to do what I want you to do. Well, I could also ask you and try to convince you, but that takes more time, and that's a lot more resources, and a lot of people don't have the resources, so it's just easier to scare you, right? And that, I think, is what's over here. And I'm writing this all out now. Good morning, Donald. How are you doing? Right? Well, that's usually what happens. You end up having Russian friends, and then all of a sudden things are a little grayer. The first buddy I ever met who was Russian was working with me when I was in telecom a long time ago, and I mean, like the turn of the millennia. Um, and I learned a lot from her about Russia. I learned a lot from her about how things really were over there and what was going on. And tired at the tired at oh, for some you're at the dentist. I think. And she's from Kazakhstan, and she actually was really, really, really close to Star City. And I'm like, I've known you for 20 years, and you didn't tell me you live near Star City, Baikonur. And she's like, oh, I was just outside of Baikonur. I was like, why won't you tell me this? Well. Oh, your transportation to the dentist. But yeah, she was the first person I ever met that was actually Russian and things like that. And boy, she hates Putin. Boy, does she hate Putin. Um, so real quick, I'm adding all the things. Okay. There we go. That makes me feel better. Okay, so what she says here is, this is Chang. Chang now talking to the AI said, we used to scare people to make them do stuff, but the lesson we took from it was harder to convince people to explain things and explain the situation. And there was a lot of discussion, and it was time consuming and everything like that, but it was worth it because it wasn't worth it for what the results were later on. That needs to be put in there. There we go. Mosquito foragers? Hmm. There we go. Sure. Oh, hey, some user, do you know how to get to the Discord server? Do you use Discord? Load up Discord again. Okay. Here. Oh, well, I'm gonna put it in the what's it's anyway. So if anybody wants to go to the Discord server. Oh, you're getting eaten by the mosquitoes in the car. I get it now. Cool. Thank you. Just saw a car license plate that says Wolfie. That's awesome. Oh, okay. This is from Production IG. Huh. Let me open in the browser. I need to get a better view of this. There we go. Wow, you got a really good scan of it. May I save it? Yeah, Production IG is one of the big guys. Thank you. I appreciate that because I'll use this for something. It's really cool looking. All right. Now that I've saved it, I'm going to open it with. Fine. It's going to make me do this the old-fashioned way. Hang on. Here, I'll bring it up. All right. This is what some user has just posted. So there we go. Okay. So just looking at these here. Oh my gosh. So this is seconds. It's probably really meaning just time in general. Because this is in. This is drawing. And this is for whatever reason. It's either card or not card, but I think it says cut. Because that 2 is pretty small. So I think this is cut. And so the breakdown pretty much goes like, and I'm thinking about this one here. I know this kanji. I just have to think about it for a second. So what's really going on in these two here? So this would be the way that you'd use this. So this would be one, interior house, and then Bob says, Bob, I don't even know what I mean. Says hi. In seconds is 1:30 to 2:04:50, and then you got Bob. He's standing here, and you kind of sketch him out. His arm on high. He's got his tie. So that's really what because they're spaced correctly. Mm-hmm. What part of the script is it? Right. They're spaced apart because they're evenly spaced. Kanji is usually evenly spaced. It's a tradition. It's kind of like, do you know when we do, there's a certain justification in text, which you see in newspapers, and it's called column justification. So in other words, it takes all the words and it spaces them evenly between the right and the left side. When you do left justify, everything only goes to the one side, right? And then when you do right justify, everything goes to the other. What you end up with is a sentence that's like this, and then a sentence that's like that, and then a sentence that's like this and like that, and you end up with kind of a rough side on this side. Well, we have a way we do in newspapers where we do the both side justification or column justification, and that spreads the words out a little bit, so it changes the spacing in the words so that the words all end in the correct spot on either side. And it's the same thing they're doing here. They just place the kanji here and here because inside this box you could see the justification, right? They're not exact because this was hand done, because like this guy's not exactly centered right here, and this guy's not exactly centered either. So they did the best that they could. Probably when they did this, it would have been the 90s. So either it was on an early word processor or something. But yeah. Yep. And when we say cut, by the way, I think that's their term for scene. No, it's not. Because actually, I know what they're doing here. They're talking about angles. Yeah, no, it's just two characters that are justified, column justification. They're talking about angles. So you have cut 1, right? Then cut 2 is reverse looking at Tim, right? So here's Bob and here's Tim, who waves hi too. In the end, once we're done with all these are cut by sequences that were already decided. Since this is for animation, when we do this, you're going to want to go through each one of these, and then these become your keys when we're done. Right? We send this picture off to be a key. The key starts this cut. Once we're at the end of this cut, how long it is till the next location or next section here, right? This is 2:04:51 to, let's say, 4:01:53, and they'll put the they'll put it down precisely to the second, because of course you need to know how many frames you're going to have to deal with, and how many cells, and how many things, and what's going to be in each one of these scenes. How much information are you going to have to give? So, hey Merrick, so far it's been pretty good. So that's what this is. Nope, don't save it. This one, however, save. You're welcome. All right, so now continuing on with this. Just trying to think it through. Okay. This has turned out to be much better. Over the course of these 2 hours, I have completely worked on this story concept, and it's gone from an okay story to really interesting and engaging, which is really cool. I'm very pleased. We have about 10 minutes left, and I'm going to go take a shower. I actually kind of want to do that and clean up and hit the day. Or I might go to sleep. I haven't figured out what I'm doing. I don't know what I'm doing. I actually do not know what I'm doing. I legitimately do not know what I'm doing today. Hmm. Okay, let's see. So now we're going to need to go through one more sort of wash of this. And probably for me, I will probably not erase everything, but put a new layer on top of it and sort of consolidate all of these ideas down and crystallize them. But I want to give it a day to think about it. I've put out my episode 1 is out for reading on for beta readers to read to see if it makes sense and it's coherent. Um, it was not done like this one, which it should have been, but wasn't, because I was in a hurry to do it. Because this is for me to do these things and not have them be kind of weird and fluffy. I need to really start from the top and just kind of get a basic idea of what the top is, and then break into 3 parts and then work those 3 parts until they all make sense. And you know what I mean? Like I kind of need to, because I lose focus so easily on the main plot. What am I doing in this episode? What's the point of this episode? So I've got to be very careful. So yeah, transition would be trans, and SLG. SLG. Slugs. Oh, it's all right. We're only running for another 5 minutes. Were they using slugs for animation? I need to look. Hang on. Yeah, it's slugs. That's what it is. So I was just trying to figure that out because I was like, yeah, there's an additional meaning in animation. Slugs is when you time something to the storyboards. So slugging is when you're actually timing everything up so that they match the storyboards, so that you can make an animatronic or an animatic, not animatronic, animatic. An animatic in animation is when you already have all the audio in there and all the voices are already edited and everything like that, but you don't have any animation yet. So instead, you just put one piece up, one piece up, one piece up. I'll show you an example of it here. Let me find one for you to show what essentially happens there. Because I have an example of it that works really well. But it's out on my other drive, so I've got to go find it. Wait. I've got a thing for this. Where is it? See, now I'm looking for this thing because it's fun. Why have I lost it somewhere? Well, I'll have to find it for you at some point. But a slug is slugging is when you time stuff up so that it's all timed up correctly. Shrug. It's in here somewhere. Yeah. Anyway. Hey, history of animation over here. I snagged it somewhere along the line. Oh well. Slugging. No, it's okay. So slugging is a term. It's an industry term. It's not something you hear outside of animation. But slugging is the timing. So it's the same thing as that seconds side that was over there. What's the time on it? So all right. And you can always throw these questions at me. So anyway, okay. Well, that though I think it pretty much ends my day though. I am going to turn off this music because it's like irritating now. Now I'm all irritated. Any more questions before I head out? Make like a tree and leaf. I'm going to save this as well. So, okay, well, I think we are done for the day. Thank you for joining me today. I really appreciate it, and I'll see you tomorrow. Tomorrow will be Friday. It looks like I'm working Monday, but not any other days after Monday. So Monday is, fine. And again, to everybody, happy Moon Day. It's the day that we landed on the moon and human beings walked on another celestial object. So happy Moon Day. And I will see you all later. I'll see you tonight or tomorrow. And some user, I hope I see you tomorrow as well. And as always, keep your eyes on the stars, guys. Bye-bye.